we're one of the only types of attorneys that we get in the deal after the deal has already been done. And we just spend the entire time trying to retroactively correct mistakes that may have happened prior to. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. I'm Tiffany Weber and I have my favorite guest with me today. You guys know him, you love him. Sometimes you like his hats, sometimes you don't, and that is Ryan Weber. Yeah.
The king of this podcast.
I mean, yeah, I guess so.
Technically, yeah, because I'm the only male that is on here.
Yeah. Regularly, at least.
Yeah. So I appreciate you shouting out my hats.
I really like the one today.
I've graduated into a law hat and get a lot of questions on it, but also get a lot of compliments.
Yeah.
And, I want you, our good friend, Sean Cato, I would love for you to whisper into the microphone. He said, if you were ever in court and you had the opportunity to do your opening statement, what would he want you to say?
I am the law.
I am the law. And that's about how his voice sounded too.
Yeah,
So
I can't do it.
Shout out to Sean Cato and Tiff, who is the law. So my hat that says law, I think of Sean and say, I am the law, and I'm not the law, but
you're not.
Makes me feel good about it. So today we are going to dive into something. We get a lot of you crazy people on YouTube writing your comments of when we posted about if you should use a real estate agent's bad signs of all this stuff about real estate agents.
Yeah.
And then people go in there and they're like, I would never use a real estate agent. This is so easy. I can do all of this myself. I'm just going to use a real estate attorney. And when you read that, you're like, no, you ain't. You are not just coming to me.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about the difference between a real estate agent and a real estate attorney. Who does what? Why is there a difference? Depending on who you ask on the internet, we only know North Carolina because that's our state that we're in. But there's between 9 and 15 states that are attorney-only states. I would love for somebody to give me the true answer and what those states are. But we know that those are attorney states where you do a closing with a real estate attorney. So today, let's dive into... first off, what does the real estate agent do in the real estate transaction? And we'll kind of go back and forth as far as like, would an attorney be able to help with that or not?
So may I recommend that we approach it the opposite way?
This is your podcast. You may do whatever you'd like.
Let's talk about what the real estate attorney does and does not do.
Okay.
Because to be honest with you,
because you are a real estate attorney, so that's
I'm not a real estate agent, so I don't know everything they do. They do more than I would ever have eyes on. But I can tell you what I do. And the things that I'm not going to do.
Also, this is going to blow people's minds. We do thousands of closings a year. And the reason is because a closing takes an hour on average.
The appointment takes an hour. The closing takes a lot longer than
Correct. We have a team. And Tiff owns a law firm that has a team around us. So we do handle thousands of closings in one year. In 2021, you personally did over 1,000. And this blew people's minds that you could do that.
2021 was the year Ben passed away. So I personally did like 1,500.
Yeah. And people were like, there's no way, you're a liar. So Tiff, you liar that you've done thousands of closings in 1 year. How does that make you feel?
Whatever. I mean, like the people that are going to argue about that, I'm like, they're always going to argue about it.
I love reading the arguments of people who are not lawyers or doesn't know anything about our business that are like, no, you're wrong.
Okay.
You are wrong that you did that. So
I hope you felt good typing it.
Yeah. Makes me laugh. YouTube comments, always the best. If you want a good chuckle or get fired up, but if you go into it having a chuckle mentality, go read some YouTube comments.
I'll pass. The thing that keeps me doing this is not reading the comments. So I'll stick to that.
Yep.
So
what do you do, Tiff?
What do I do? Well, when I say what the closing attorney does, I'm referring to not me specifically. This is the team effort. So we have multiple different roles. There's a very detailed process of how we take a closing from when we first get the contract to when the deed is recorded and we disperse the funds. But in North Carolina, almost always we aren't getting a deal until the contract's been signed.
Sometimes you guys may help produce that contract.
Sometimes.
But it's very rare.
Yeah. Why can't I think of his real name? I can think of his Instagram handle, Sue and Sous Vide.
Oh, yeah. Our man from Canada.
Yes. Why can't I remember his? I know it, and it's just not
That's
coming to
how
me
I
right now.
remember him, but
he had a really good comment on one of these, is that we're one of the only types of attorneys that we get in the deal after the deal's already been done, and we just spend the entire time trying to retroactively correct mistakes that may have happened prior to. But yeah, like in North Carolina, 98%, maybe 95% of the time, the contract's done when I am involved. When we first get engaged and one of our attorneys is involved in, like reviewing the title, all of that, contract's signed. We have no part in that. So who's doing that? If it's not us, it's the real estate agent. And they're using the standard forms that have been, kind of time tested. They get constantly revised in conjunction with the real estate commission and really smart real estate attorneys. The smartest real estate attorneys in North Carolina are the ones doing this.
That's not you.
God, there's a lot smarter.
Did
more
I earn brownie
experienced.
points on that one?
Yeah, you did, but there's a lot of smarter attorneys than me.
Not in my eyes, Tiff. Not in my eyes.
Thank you. So those forms are really good and really comprehensive. They don't fit every situation. So sometimes maybe they're under contract and they realize after they're under contract, it doesn't fit our situation perfectly. And they're contacting me to draft an addendum or an amendment. So that's more often than we would be drafting the contract.
Who would the people be that are not generally using that standard offer to purchase?
Commercial. Yeah. So
investors?
Depends on what they're investing in. If it's a residential property, they're going to do a long-term rental or even a short-term rental. There's standard forms for that.
Gotcha.
But commercial, even though there is a commercial standard offer to purchase, most of the time
they don't use that.
They don't use that because it's so complex, and they have their own attorneys that are negotiating for months before they're ever under contract. But still, then I get involved after that contract is signed. But if I'm representing a commercial client, I'm involved in the contract negotiations as well. But considering that most of our practice is residential, most of the time, I'm not involved in that contract portion at all.
Yeah. So prior to that, of how this happened, like there was houses that were shown, there was properties that were searched, and we get the people. I could do that on Zillow. Great. I also wonder how you go and visit the house. Are you contacting the listing agent to then let you in? Because why would they, I guess?
I think there's you have to have you have to have an account on showing. There's.
Yeah. So I'm wondering the people that are saying, well, I can just do all that on the internet. Well, you need to walk through the house. How are you going to walk through the house? That's one of the questions that I have of, how are you going to go actually see and touch and feel these houses? How are you going to set up the inspections? How are you going to do your survey? If you're not using a real estate, I don't know. I truly don't know that, which is why I'm asking this question. The real estate agent does all that. So contract comes in to you guys. So
let's back up even more. That contract has a price in it. So the price was negotiated. How do you come up with a price? It's not out of thin air, the comps. I do not give an opinion on value ever.
Right.
So if you come to me and say, am I paying too much for this property? I'm going to tell you, I don't know. You're going to need to get a real estate agent or an appraiser. The agent could run comps of recent sales.
Or attempt to do it yourself, even though you don't know any of it. Unless you've tried to run the comp. You could try to do all this stuff if you think that you're capable. And once again, I don't know how you can find all that information. But, this is a big one for you when people... Yeah. The YouTube comments is really where I'm going into. Yeah. Is
if someone's saying, don't get an agent, just get a real estate attorney. And that person is assuming that I will take on all of that.
Well, and they think that you'll do the negotiation, and real estate in North Carolina, real estate attorneys don't do the negotiation.
Unless it's commercial. I've been involved from the beginning, here's the thing. A real estate attorney could do more than that, but guess what? It's going to be outlined in the engagement letter and change the scope of the representation, and it will cost you significantly more money than a closing.
Yeah.
So if you think you're just going to get a real estate attorney to do a whole extra scope beyond a real estate closing for the same price as a real estate closing, you're not.
And you'll pay $300 to $500 per hour. Every email is a 0.1, which means every 6 minutes they're charging you.
Or more. It depends on how long the email is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But, that's how that goes when you have your real estate agent. It's
every
based
time
on
you
commission.
call, it's however long you're on the phone, you're getting charged
a
for
30-second phone call is at least 6 minutes.
Yeah. Hourly billing is, live and die by the 0.1.
Yeah, that's how it works. So, that's something to consider if you're one of the folks that think, I'm just going to use the real estate attorney.
There may be attorneys that will take on that extra scope, but it is at a price. And one of the things, sometimes the attorney states will get a bad rap because they're like, well, it's so much cheaper to close in a title company state. Not necessarily. North Carolina is still one of the cheapest states in the country to close real estate. And a lot of times we'll get people be like, well, I just want to close with so-and-so title company, but they're out of state. And, I only have to pay $6,000 when I close it out there. And I'm like, I wish we made $6,000 at closing.
If you only want to pay $6,000, I will gladly take it.
Yeah. That's a steal for you. Gosh, I feel like I'm stealing doing that, because that's just not, because we have a specific scope and we have developed processes to do it efficiently, we're able to do the work without charging you every 0.1. That's kind of that's the benefit of our specific scope. And part of the reason why I'm not going to take on something outside of that scope without some alternative, like a fee arrangement in place to be compensated for that time, because it's outside of our process. So the scope of a closing, title search, that's our primary function. Our primary function is not my inspection report came back and they need to replace all the windows. That's not in our scope. We're not helping you negotiate repairs. Our primary function is to make sure buyer takes clear title to the property. And so we do that.
Which, once again, what is clear title in you guys' eyes? Unencumbered.
Reasonably unencumbered. There's really no such thing.
For us dummies in the room, what does this unencumbered mean?
I'm getting to that. I'm getting there. There's really no such thing as unencumbered property anymore after all of the developments. There's zoning regulations, covenants and restrictions.
Okay, so I made a whoopsie. The camera that's right here that records Tiff, who's right there, well, it died. So unfortunately, you're going to have to look at me for the rest of this podcast because there's really good information here, but you're just not going to ever see Tiff's face. If you want to listen to it instead, go to the audio version, The Real Estate Show, wherever you get podcasts. But other than that, let's just get back to the episode. Just sorry, you're looking at this face the whole time.
Restrictions, utility easements, but unencumbered would be like raw land. You can do whatever you want with it. Nobody has any say. Nobody has any claim, anything. So there are some reasonable encumbrances like easements for utilities, zoning requirements, existing restrictions. We're looking for, is there a judgment affecting the property that has to be paid off, or else that judgment creditor can foreclose against the property, get their money. Their liens against the property. Is there a mortgage that has to be paid off?
I hear what you guys do by me walking into the office, but it's those three. It's liens, judgments, and mortgage. Obviously there's more.
There's more, but those are the main
those
things.
Are the big dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's making sure that all of the monies are paid to the correct people, so that there's nobody that holds an interest in the property if there was, something that were to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. We also, as part of that process, if you're getting a loan, we help procure, locate the title company that will issue the insurance. We do not provide title insurance. That money does not go to us. We're not allowed.
In North Carolina,
you can't do the closing and the, so I am not making any money off of people getting title insurance.
Yeah. So let's explain this because, we have a lot of real estate agents that listen and they want to use their title company that they recommend. How do we choose the title company? Because once again, just like real estate agents have a fiduciary duty to their clients, so do we. So do you. So tell us why and how you choose title companies.
Yeah. So the North Carolina standard offer to purchase says the seller has to provide marketable and insurable title, and those can be different things. Insurable meaning that a title company is willing to insure, and who decides if they'll insure? The title company. So part of that process of us, whenever we're soliciting title companies or soliciting for who will insure the property, is requesting a prior policy. So, one thing that would be super helpful is if someone wants to direct what company we use, is they give us the prior policy. The benefit of the prior policy is that the buyer is able to save money by getting a reissue rate for the policy. So if we're not able to get a reissue rate, it could be hundreds of dollars more for the buyer. So we're trying to look out for the buyer's wallet too, in being able to
and
get.
I think that's the biggest issue, I guess, that you run into is if you can get a prior, you're generally in good shape.
Yeah.
But if you can't, like, you don't want to have to charge a buyer, and they don't want to pay additional for the same exact thing, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, only because, agent XYZ gets a kickback or whatever the deal is that they, who knows what the deal is.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily a kickback, like it's there's some synergy there for them to recommend a company.
Kickback wasn't the right phrase, but some well, you need to use this title company. Yeah. Well, the buyer's going to, hey buyer, do you want to spend $500 more for the same coverage? No. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not going to use that one. I'm sorry, because I also have a fiduciary.
To be fair, if the buyer has signed some sort of preference form, said this is the company I want to use, we are going to honor that every time.
Because the buyer's
but it's got to be buyer's
said,
choice.
Yeah, they've already said yes.
But the other thing about a prior policy is that, in our engagement letter, we have the option for doing it's called a full search for a certain time period to cover the Marketable Title Act, or you have a prior policy, you may be able to tack to the previous policy.
Just waiting for the word tack on. I just know that one.
And do a shortened search.
Right. And what does a shortened search do? Speed
is one thing, but also you can tack to a policy that's already existing where some other title company or a title company's already agreed to insure over things back in the chain of title. So if we have to do the full search because there's either no existing policy or we had to use a company that didn't have a prior, so we had to go back in the chain of title, we're finding things throughout that time that perhaps another company has agreed to insure over, but we can't tack to their policy because we don't have the prior to tack to. So that creates all of these things that have to be resolved before that title company will insure. Yeah. So the tacking can have some benefits for cost savings and also lessened risk because these other things, some other company, a company's already agreed to insure over these issues. Now, of course, a buyer can, regardless of whether we have a prior policy or not, say to us, hey,
I want to use them.
I want to use them, or I want a full search. That's fine. We'll do it. But we explain in our engagement letter, if a prior policy is available, we will go that route unless one, it's not available, or two, you notify us, I want a full search. This is the cost for a full search. So it's all laid out in the scope of what we do.
So getting clear title is the attorney's main focus.
Number one thing we do.
What kind of moving forward through that process? Like now that we've got clear title, you guys are moving probably closer to the actual closing day. What do you guys do versus what a agent does for closing day?
So at that point, it's with our closers who are really processing the file from every aspect of like coordinating times and dates for signing, working with the lender if there is one to balance the figures so that it's really clear what the buyer has to bring to closing, getting that information disseminated, collecting all sorts of stuff like peer permits if there are one, septic permits to make sure that the number of bedrooms was allowed. Any invoices that need to be paid to parties on the closing statement, making sure we know who gets paid a commission and how much. There's so much coordination going on back and forth. It would be impossible for me to in detail say, but they're the ones making it all happen behind the scenes. But what they are not doing and what the attorney is not doing is when you say the windows need replaced.
Right.
We're not stepping in to negotiate those things. It's outside of the scope of what we do.
You guys actually don't.
We don't schedule inspections.
Or you don't look at the house.
No.
Like you sometimes you guys do. If you look at it, it's like, oh, this is an $8 million house. Let me see what it looks like.
We've looked at the legal description,
right?
But that doesn't even tell us where it is.
But you didn't even look at the Zillow listing or the MLS.
I don't know what it looks like.
You don't even. Nothing about the house.
No.
And don't care about it, to be honest.
No.
You want to make sure that it has clean and clear title.
Unless it's $7 million and
then
the
you
closers
guys
pull it
love
up and they want to sue it looks like.
Yeah.
Um,
Like,
but
this one's, look at Christian McCaffrey's house.
yeah, people will be like, well, did you order my survey? No, we don't do that.
Yeah.
That's not, that's not in the scope of look in our engagement letter. We tell you what we do. We've got a list of what the attorney does and does not do. But guess who does? Your real estate agent will do that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll help you coordinate
And
your
if you don't
inspections,
want to use a
your
real
surveys.
estate agent, that's the thing.
Then
that
you
need
do
to
that.
do it on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can do it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but the attorney is not going to do it for you without some broadened scope and payment in mind
Now,
for
what
that.
if, let's say one of these for sale by owner or, buying without an agent person comes to you and then they start asking for all these things or asking a lot of questions. Is there a time where you guys can say like, hey, that's outside of our scope. And like, well,
we have to, or if we say we could do that, but you need to understand it's this additional charge.
Gotcha.
Like we have to.
You have to then broaden the scope and have whatever
Yeah.
that fee associated
Yep.
with. Gotcha. So, you guys get to closing day in North Carolina. We have to sit with a attorney or a notary or.
Well, actually, you don't have to sit with the attorney. There's all kinds of ethics opinions on like the attorney doesn't actually have to be in the one in the room signing. We like to do it that way.
And why do you do that?
Developing relationships with the clients and the real estate agents who have taken the chance to like let us have business. But also it is a really great opportunity for the clients to be able to ask legal questions directly to the attorney and get some answers.
I mean, think about it. How many times have you been in a room where you're not going to pay additional money to talk to an attorney and ask a question of like, what does this mean on this document?
Yeah.
That's why we do it.
Yeah. But again, if you look at the ethics opinions in North Carolina, we have to certify title. Again, most important function. We don't have to be in the room at the closing. Our personal take is we do. We like to do that. Yeah. We don't have to, like, if the buyers and sellers don't sit together, we don't have to be in there with the sellers. Really, we don't have to be in there with the buyers. We don't have to be in there with anybody. Just a notary does. But just our preference based on, time and testing, and it feels like the right thing for us to do and good for our business. So we do. Yeah.
So after the closing, let's kind of look at what the attorney's office does or the attorney does and what the agent does. So after the signing, you guys need to run the deed in North Carolina. We're
record the deed.
Yeah, we gotta go to the register deeds.
Do the title update before we do that. But yes, that's part of the clear title process. Recording the deed and then dispersing the money.
And the agents, once it's signed, they're generally done.
I mean,
a lot of them leave the keys at the law firm's office,
or they could be, or making arrangements to get the keys after the deed is recorded. But yeah, for the most part, now we're lucky to work with agents that develop really good relationships with their clients. So they don't leave them high and dry at the closing table. Like, see ya, never call me again. They continue to be able to answer questions after the fact about, oh, I got this letter in the mail. Is this real? No, it's a scam. Throw it away. So they continue being able to do that after the closing. But for the most part, the agent's hard work is done. Ours too. Once the deed is recorded and the money is dispersed. So
quick little recap, remember, if you are thinking about doing it on your own, what does the attorney's office do? What does the real estate agent do? Real estate agents do negotiations. Real estate agents do inspections. Real estate agents show you around properties and go to appointments with you. The attorney in North Carolina, they make sure you have clean and clear legal title.
Though I like to think of it as like, a lot of times I'll advise clients outside of a real estate perspective of like, say we're negotiating a contract and it comes down to some details, and I'll make a list of like, these are legal decisions. These are business decisions. So all of these things have legal implications. All of these things have to do with what money you're going to spend or not spend, or some other condition that doesn't have some legal consequence. Like how much you decide to pay for a property, that's a business decision. What deposits you're willing to accept or pay, that's a business decision. So like the negotiations on repairs, business decision.
I laugh at you saying business decision because in football, we would always joke around of making business decisions. And that would be when you're getting ready to either block or tackle somebody and the other person slid out of the way. And we would always be like, they made a business decision because they didn't want to get in front of whatever that was.
That's smart. That's funny.
Made me laugh.
I'm going to be thinking about that now. But I think of it like, obviously the attorney handles the legal decisions, the legal questions. The agent's handling the business decisions. So they're guiding you through all of that. And part of the reason why, some people might hear me saying, I'm not going to do that. That's not in my scope, and think I don't want to help. That's not it. Because our scope is what it is. I mentioned that's how we're able to be efficient. But it's also how we're able to keep the costs
down
as low as we can. Now, obviously it's a business. We all have to make money. We have mouths to feed. Like, there are people that work here that need to be able to feed their families. It's not a charity, but it is the way that we're able to keep closings less expensive because of our scope being defined as what it is. And again, like, I'm not going to walk into someone else's job who've said they'll do some job for me for X amount of dollars, then expect 2 to 3 times the work of that for the same amount of money. Like, I'm going to expect to pay more money for that.
Well, you would, not everybody would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good explanation as to how real estate attorneys and real estate agents differ. Hopefully that helps, people kind of understand, well, I thought I could do this on my own and I'll just go to the attorney.
And maybe you can, but you need to understand how much of that, like, it's not like every portion of the agent's job, you can just have the attorney do it. Maybe they will, but you will pay for it.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I have left is make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
That's all I want. Just subscribe. If we give you any information, any value, just subscribe to the channel.
Yeah.
That's all I ask.
Makes us want to keep doing it when you subscribe.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Tiff, get us on out of here because I can't do a outro.
Okay. Thanks, guys, for listening to this episode of The Real Estate Show. Thank you, Ryan, my favorite guest, for joining again on this episode. And I hopefully you learned something, at least in North Carolina, about what the attorney does and what the agent does, so that if you decide you want to give it a go on your own, you at least have more information to be able to make a better decision about that. We will catch you guys on the next episode.